All right. So Will, a good question to kick us off is, that how did you come to own like your own gym, or like the motivation to start your own gym and you do other things? So I'm just curious, like, what sparked that in you that's like, hey, I got to do this?
That's a good question. The gym was a divine thing, to say the least. The way that fell into my lap and worked itself out, being a dream of mine for 12 years. There was a gym called Church of Iron back in, how old was I? 2012, 2013. That, I don't know the whole story too, but from what I was told, the owner had walked away. And the other owner that ran the hockey side of it was like, yo, I need somebody to run this. My friend Jesse Pimentel, it
turns out I played rugby potentially with his friend
potentially
Jesse.
With a couple of my friends, who was episode 1 of my podcast. That was the only 3-hour podcast I've done. I think it'll be the last 3-hour podcast I do. But anyways, he was running it, and he was also the market recruiter for a sales company. Well, I go to him. I'm like, hey, I got 15 G's in my bank account. I'm, my wife and I, wife now, we were engaged then. We had a baby that was on the way. I don't even know if she either that or had just been born. And he's like, dude, first he told me like, okay, let me think about this. I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. Cool. Calls me back in a couple of weeks later. I meet him at a coffee shop. I find out later, this is like where he worked all the time. So I see this guy, working at a coffee shop and then working out and playing rugby all day. I'm like, cool. He'd figured out that company. It was great. So he goes, you're an idiot for wanting to put your money into this. This is a sinking ship. I'm probably walking away in 6 months, and starts talking to me about the sales opportunity. So long story short, he recruits me into the sales company. I become his number 1 recruit over the next 3.5 years ever. And was top in the market, and then top 30 in the nation with that company. The dynamic there was that he and I actually became really good friends, still friends to this day. He actually lives in our neighborhood now. Bought the house that we were originally going to buy, and then ended up having to walk away from. We became really close through that, and through that sales career, I had done really well. Started making a lot of money at a young age. I was making 6 figures at 23, 24 years old, which to me at the time was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That was like what I had imagined making as my top line salary ever. And I had broken that at 24.
You set some new goals now.
The funny thing is, it humbled me when I got into the clothing business, because I started working with people who were millionaires, billionaires, who were making what I was per day, right? So puts it in perspective for you. What had happened though in that time is I had racked up my bills like any young dumbass would, right? Bought a nicer truck, bought my wife a new car, had everything on payments, right? Had a mortgage, which wasn't stupid. Like, we didn't move into a stupidly large house or anything. Just had a mortgage. Bought a house at 25. Had my son on the way. And so money was not getting just like invested or anything like that. My bills were,
you sound like a brand new, wide receiver in the NFL.
Right? I can only imagine what I would have done with $1 million if I had gotten a contract like that. So I'm glad I didn't. But, long story short, through all that, I felt trapped at this career. And when they brought in...
just to go back, you went that sales route, but the conversation started with the gym. So did that just... Yeah.
Well, so... I'll get there.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll try to keep it fairly short. That sales career, what encouraged me to be an entrepreneur was they brought in leadership that I'll just say I didn't agree with. Right. Jesse ended up leaving the company. I left the company about 6 months later, and then our other friend left the company 3 months later, and then actually the other regional director that brought us in ended up leaving after that.
Okay.
So it was just domino effect at that point. Well, trying to find a new career, I just felt trapped, right? I couldn't go anywhere because I had no college degree. I had sales experience and I was really good, but I sold cell phones. So not many people looked at that as like a viable career, right? So basically got to a point where I didn't want my future to be in somebody else's hands just because they did or didn't like me. And that's what started leading me down the road of entrepreneurship and business ownership of my own. I didn't want to be somebody's pawn. I wanted to be the ringleader, treat my people right, and do things my way. Not quite at that point yet. I get into clothing sales, do that for a while, but I basically am running my own business, right? It's a W-2 position, 100% commission, right? Great business, great company called Tom James. And I would encourage anybody that wants to get a start in sales, go spend 2 years there, 3 years there, and cut your teeth, because you will learn so much. The people are incredible. It's run.
What's, for those that aren't familiar, what's Tom James?
It is a custom clothing company.
Okay.
So suits, sport coats, shirts, pants, jeans.
Probably needs some work.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about that.
we definitely can. I've got the right connections for you. But I learned a little bit more about kind of running and operating my own business through that, because you have a lot of support, but you're running your business. You're building a business within this company. As I'm doing this business, I am driving a lot. I have a client that's hour and a half away. I've got a client that's 45 minutes away. I've got, and I have some really cool people that I work with that are the CEOs, owners, whatever, of their companies. And part of the reason I feel like I worked so well with those people is because one, I wanted to kind of become that myself, but I just resonated with that personality because it just like, this is what I needed to do. I needed to be a business owner. So spending some time in that, my aunt passed away and left me a little bit of inheritance, and it basically set me up perfectly. Let me go back here. I also met the CEO of my insurance company through my brother. They were best friends, and I ended up partnering with them and spent about 6 months making that decision, but then exited from Tom James to partner with them and start my own insurance business. So I'm doing that for about 2 years before the gym. I'm training at the gym because I want to compete in CrossFit. So I need a little more training on the gymnastics, things like that. So I start training at a gym called ThriveFit. I actually met this owner about 5 years prior. My general manager now, I went in to have her coach me a little bit on Olympic weightlifting. So it's kind of funny. We only met each other one time, and then when we came back around and I met her, I'm like, "Do you remember me?" She's like, "Actually, I do." I'm like, "Sweet." And then that went from there, and she's been incredible as our general manager ever since. But the way the gym fell into my lap was this owner was burned out on owning the gym. He had owned it through COVID. He had owned it about 8 years prior to that. So he'd owned this gym, ThriveFit, for 10 years. And it was the second biggest gym in Indy, next to Three Kings, which if you're in the CrossFit world, you should know Three Kings if you're in Indiana, right? So he ended up, it was just time for him to exit, and it was God's plan for me to enter, right? So we figure out the deal and make it happen, and things just start falling into place, which is funny because they fall out of place first, right? As soon as he and I handshake on the deal, this is the number, this is what we're doing, the person who was going to run it for me quits. And I'm very glad she did. We'll just say that.
Okay.
2 days later, one of my members, shout out to Sparky, he goes, "Dude, have you talked to Caitlin?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You should hit her up." I hit her up, and she's like, "Actually, this is perfect timing for me. I'm looking to shift things up in my career." And the way I explained the opportunity, from what she told me, it was her dream opportunity. Basically her opportunity to come in and run this gym, my way, but her way too. Our views aligned a lot, right? And since day one, I have been able to basically be almost completely hands off of the day-to-day operations. and it's been incredible. We've the way she came, it fell into place. And then shortly after that, the assistant coach Logan, who's just become an incredible coach. He was a great coach to start. It's been cool to see him come out of his shell over the last 2 years and really just get comfortable in the community. And he's improved as an athlete, improved as a coach. It's been really cool to watch. And he fell into our laps about a month after, maybe not even that, after we officially took over. So by no means is this my doing.
So
right?
the talent just kind of found its way into the right spot.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I just say, like, yeah, I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I love the Lord. Like, that is all him. I had nothing to do with that. I can say that I've been good at putting the right people into the right positions. But that's not the case. I had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Like, I just went where the wind was blowing me, so to speak, and made decisions.
Well, I want to sidebar into something that you brought up that I think would be interesting to talk about. What did you learn moving cell phones that you thought, like, from, like, because some folks that listen to this are interested in growing their sales career, how to influence, negotiate, and all of that. It's rarely taught well in the classroom of a college or a high school. It's usually taught really well in the school of hard knocks and the streets of, like, hey, what's the psychology around what's really going on to get these things done. And there's a gap from, like, knowing to actually doing. Whereas I think in retail style environments, you're really doing before you know a lot. So there's a lot of reps coming in there that you're like, oh. Yeah. So I'd love to hear how that, like, what you learned there came back to serve you well in those other areas where you're in your early 20s making $100,000.
So the first thing I'll say to that is retail gives you a lot of opportunity, right? And most people don't maximize it. It also is taking a process and just executing. I am not smart. I shouldn't say I'm not smart. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I am not the best salesman in the world. I'm not, at least at that time, I was definitely not a higher level thinker, right? I was very opinionated, shaved head, looked like a neo-Nazi, just total meathead, right?
So somebody didn't want to walk in the door and be like, he looks nice.
Yeah. Most people that walked in the door were terrified.
Yeah.
And there was a story, my buddy Stacy, who was our kind of operations manager of this market. So he just decided to come in and work a store with me for that day. And he's sitting over in the corner. There's this gal that is sitting with me, and she's pissed about something. Like, I'm trying to help her with a customer service issue I had nothing to do with, right? I at this time, like, I have a deviated septum, so I sniff sometimes, or snort sometimes, as he would call it. Well, I'm sitting there helping her, and I was having some issues with my nose that day, so I sniffed once or twice, and she was like, "Can you get your nose under control?" Stacy's like, "This is it. Will's gonna kill her. He's going to jail. That's it. That's all." Her head is going through the windows.
Oh my God.
And I just looked at her and I was like, "Ma'am, I'm trying to help you, but if you're gonna disrespect me, you can walk out that door." And she was like, "I'm sorry.
I'm sorry." Oh gosh.
So it was a great place to cut my teeth. It was a ton of fun. I don't think I've found an environment like that, as toxic as that environment was, because anybody that did well in this company was perceived to be very shady. Many of them were, not all of them. I was one of the few that were not. And I can say that wholeheartedly, and my friends that were in leadership in that company can back that up.
And what you mean by that is, like, the right packages and programs that actually fit the needs of the client versus what can I get them to say yes to.
Yeah, and also I didn't just slap devices on people's accounts and not tell them about it. So that is something that was done very many times. There was a guy there, and I won't name his name, who had done a very large transaction, had one of the biggest commission months in the history of the Indiana market. And he did $15,000 in commission that month. I did 12. He had a bag of phones sitting in the back, storage room for about 6 months before the DX finally started coming through on that account. Well, my friend, being the ops manager, goes, "You know what you made this month?" And I go, "Yeah, $12,000. He sends me the numbers. He's like, "Yeah, you made $11,950 or something." So I had like one return or something, right? He goes, "You know how much homie made who apparently outsold you?" I'm like, "How much?" I'm like, "He sold $15,000, right?" He's like, "Yeah." He had $7,000 in commission that month. Half of it had been returned, deactivated, been told it was like people didn't know what they had bought, kind of thing.
So it sounds like that was like a good formative experience, just seeing like the how not to's, and like, I can still win, and feel good going home doing that. So play that forward to Tom James. Is that right? You're at Tom James now. Like, what did you learn there that kind of advanced? You kind of already knew you had the muscle to sell in that environment. Now it's a different kind of sale. This is not like the retail kind of sale.
Right.
And I just like,
you don't have anybody walking in the door and you have no leads coming in.
And the tangential part of that was cool that I would think about at that age going in there. It's almost like Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors.
Yeah. Where
you're meeting these people like, how did you get here? Yeah. Like, tell me. And they're like more than happy to probably tell you the stories and everything. And you're like, where do I go next? Like, can you invite me to some of your friends? And all of a sudden it's like, you're the suit guy or you're the guy, I'll get you guy fitted up. And now you're getting passed along here, also being a sponge, sucking that in. But the first part of that question is, I did the cell phone thing. Yeah. I learned some skills. I know it works there. How did you add to that? When you got to either through their training and protocols, which you said, hey, you should probably work there for a couple of years, cut your teeth. Like, what were some of the big wins that you, from a learning standpoint?
You do about 3 months in training there before going out on your own and selling. And they teach you prospecting. They teach you cold calling. They teach you really just the discipline of doing the shit that sucks. There was one day I made 200 phone calls. And this was in training. And they actually put you in kind of a war room scenario and you make phone calls for 4 or 5 hours a day in training for about 2 or 3 days. And then you're making about 2 hours of phone calls every day after that throughout your career. It sucks. And that day I think I made 200 phone calls. I had 12 people answer.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And it sucked, right? And
it's almost like pulling a slot machine all day long, sitting there with a cigarette dangling out of your mouth, like
with a mind-numbing dial tone going.
Hello?
Yeah. And then you've got, and then it's very confrontational over the phone. Like that's your level of adrenaline kind of can spike a little bit.
It's like seeing a deer when you've been sitting in your chest.
And it's funny. And then you start talking to them and, I'm not interested. Because, in today's day and age, not everybody dresses nice. There's a lot of clothing you can buy off the rack that fits fairly well, especially if you fit those body styles, right? If you're skinny and feminine as a man, or you've got a dad bod, you're going to fit into clothes off the rack.
Right.
If not, now they're not going to necessarily wear the same or move the same, especially in a suit that's a natural fiber that doesn't really stretch a ton, right? It moves if it's built right, if it's constructed right around your fit. But anyways, what I learned there was that I learned how to flagship my own methodology of doing things. Their philosophy was C5 sell 2. I was like, okay. And I got to learn this from a guy named Brian Daly. He did some of my training while I was there.
Shout out Brian.
Yeah, shout out Brian. Doug Foley was my leader there, and Lee Dora taught me a lot as well. And I kind of took a little bit from all of them. Right, Lee had a ton of clients that would spend $2,000 to $3,000 every time he'd see him. He'd see him 2 to 4 times a year, and they were just repetitive. Right, he had a ton of those. He didn't have as many big hitters because he didn't spend a ton of time building rapport. Because he's just a machine. The dude just can bang it out, grind it out. Doesn't mean he wasn't building relationships his way, but it just, that's what worked for him. Brian had a ton of big clients, but not a ton of volume clients. So if one big client left, his business would take a little bit of a hit. Yeah. He'd usually refill it, and he always did very well himself. Doug was kind of right in between, and so was I. And so I learned a lot from all three of these guys, plus Jeff Franklin down in Texas. And the cool thing is they set you up with mentor programs of guys who've been doing it 20, 25 years. I mean, some of these clothiers in Tom James, I shit you not, are making $500,000 to $1 million a year. The top performing guy, Dom Roberto, he's not number one anymore. Jordan Yoakum, shout out Jordan, if you see this on LinkedIn, we still got to hook up because I still need you on my podcast. This dude went from he was top 5 when I left to number 1 in the last 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And he beats a guy named Steve Adelsberg out of Pittsburgh or Baltimore. And Steve worked 7 days a week for 20 years and it did something like $7 million in production every year selling clothes, right?
Wow.
Now these are nice clothes, but they're clothes.
Right.
He was working all the time. Jordan did it on a schedule of he works from 7:30 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And he is now the number 1 clothier.
So what was he doing differently that you learned?
He learned how to automate and processes, I think, a little bit better maybe. And I can't say that for sure because I never really got to see Steve's process. But he was like, these are the hours I'm going to work because I have a family and I want to spend time with my family. He's from Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, of all places too. Louisville, Kentucky versus Baltimore, where things out there are a little more flashy than they are in the South, right? Or at least in that area. And he just, I got to drive with him one day and just sit with him and watch. And the dude is he's a machine when he's working. And he has about 4 or 5 assistants that work for him. He has a car that the company pays $3,000 a month for, or no, they pay the payment and then they give him the rest of it.
I was about to say that's one
used
hell of
for
a
a driver. Oh, it's a Lincoln Navigator, so it's a nice ride. So anyways, he and so what you learn there is how to build relationships, how to be disciplined. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. every day, train in my garage, even in the negative 15-degree weather where you grab that bar and it sticks to your hand because it's so cold. And then I would be at the office by 7:30 every day, Monday through Friday. I didn't work Saturdays. I didn't work Sundays. I would occasionally go see one client on a Saturday, and occasionally I'd work evenings, which Jordan was helping me figure out a way to do that because some clients you can only see in the evening. So Jordan was like, hey, pick one night a week where you do evening appointments. That's it. That's the only night you work. Okay, cool. I'll start doing that. And the one I can remember specifically, I did I can't remember the exact numbers, but I did a lot of production in a day where I worked till 9 p.m. that night. And for me, I'm like, man, I want more freedom of my time. I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts when I was driving around. I tried to, when I was during the day until I was driving back for phone time or I was driving home, I wouldn't turn on music. I would listen to podcasts. So I would absorb as much information as I could. And the more my eyes were opened, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek, right? The more I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this and make money, but do it in a way where I have freedom of my time and I have the freedom to take a vacation and not worry about producing. Because the production, I was one of those that I was going to grind myself into the ground, and I basically had made peace with the fact that, okay, I'm going to do this until I'm 50, and then I'm going to retire at 50, and I'm going to disappear in the mountains with a couple $1 million to my name, you know? And now what I do with owning my own business is I don't think I'll ever stop. Things may shift, things may change. I may not put as much time into certain things as others, but I'll never stop working.
Well, but it sounds like you in that process, like in the Genesis story here of Will, you have you have the core piece of you, which is you have a driven individual that like seeks freedom, independence, control, challenges that are worthy of you, a healthy sum of risk tolerance to make the calls that you made. And you kind of aimed that energy at something that rewarded what the type of man that was going to wake up every morning and go in there, from the cell phones to the conversations you're willing to have, the openness to learn, to be wrong, to find something new, and switch. Because most days, everyone's listening to this, you wake up and you do stuff. Yeah. How much of that stuff is consciously aimed at the person you want to be at the end of that year, 5-year period? And even when I'm coaching folks, redefining what success is. Yeah. And do you have any mentors? I'm like, well, kind of, like it's a soft answer. I'm like, all right, let's get you some mentors. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10? And I help them see, you have to place yourself out in these different places in the range to come and visit you in the moment. Right. When you're making a decision, it's going to impact 80-year-old Will, 50-year-old Will that's going to be in the mountains, and then like, okay, what are my choices I make today? And it's remarkable when you do that, how you still have to do hard things, but how simple the decision becomes. It's like, I got to do an uncomfortable thing, but it's the obvious thing to do. The working out when you wake up in the morning to do that. Like, why? Because if I don't do it then, it just won't happen. Right. I won't. So there's critical pieces. You have the cell phone piece where you learn, and you learn what you liked and you learn what you don't want to do anymore. You got the Tom James piece right now where you're like, now you have some more formality in terms of training and development, and you have performers that are like that number.
And I also have a vehicle that could have made me a millionaire had I stayed. Jordan was a millionaire by the time he was 30 because of the stock options and the opportunity that Tom James provides within that. They are the only clothing company that grew during COVID.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, but I bet that has a lot to do with that culture they built of training, like the outcome-based development process versus like the transactional-based. Right. Where it's like retail, like you got churn. It's almost like a restaurant, like a churn and burn restaurant versus like a fine dining fixed menu restaurant. Like it's like a different mindset. You can have successful in both, but like one, you can't take the fine dining approach to the churn and burn, and the vice versa. If you go over here, I'm like, why are you speeding through here? This is like, I'm going to pay like $900 for this meal. It's a whole different process. So if you're giving advice right now, let's say you're talking to a young man or even a young lady that's like looking to get in, like they want those numbers.
Yeah.
And it's now, it's not then. It's like right now, when you look at your experience thus far, you're only like 32 now or 32. So you're still young. Like, what are like the top 2 or 3 things you would tell them? It's like, I need to improve in sales. I know I have the want to. They have that thing that you have.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I know I want to aim. What are the 3 things I should be doing to find myself in a position similar to you and some of the people that you talked about?
Put yourself in a position that one forces you to grow. I had kids young. That was a huge factor to early on success. If I wanted the things I wanted, I had to provide for my family first. Could have been smarter with those things. The 10 trucks I had over the last 10 years, probably didn't need those, especially the aftermarket parts that came along with them, which you don't get that money back when you trade.
You got an awesome truck out there, everyone.
Got an awesome truck.
It's really
paid off.
Yeah,
that's the funny
beautiful
thing. The only debt I have now is my house.
Nice.
And I plan to keep it that way. The $85,000 Sequoia I looked at a couple weeks ago looked really great, but then I saw that payment. I was like, nope, we're not doing that. Nope.
I'll just keep wanting to want you.
Exactly. But put yourself in a position that's gonna force you to grow. Whether that make your, if you don't have a young family or young kids or anything like that, cool. Put yourself in a position where you have to make certain payments to your financial advisor every month to where they're investing that money. And if you don't make that, well, you're sacrificing something within your lifestyle for that. I think that's a big thing that forced me to grow young and really mature young. I had 4, let's say 3 careers, because one of them was just kind of, I was trying something. I would say 3 careers in the time of being, well, maybe 4. But anyways, my number doesn't matter. Between 20 and 30. By 28, 29, I had started my insurance business, which I will do in some fashion for the rest of my life. And then the gym came. But at Tom James, I put myself in early on. I put myself in a position that forced me to grow. Then from there, be disciplined with your time. Being disciplined, and that doesn't mean get up at 4:30. That doesn't mean get up at 5 a.m.
It wouldn't hurt though.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt if you can get to bed in time, right? Because if everybody is genetically coded differently. Not everybody should get up at 4:30 a.m. And it actually will take away from your production to do so. It'll take away from something. And if you're somebody who needs physical stimulation like I am, I need time to recover. I need sleep. And I heard a podcast years ago, when I was at Tom James. It was a Tim Ferriss podcast. He was interviewing some very successful CEO. And this guy goes, you know what? I will sacrifice my morning routine to get the extra hour of sleep because I know I'm going to perform better cognitively and physically if I do that, which means the results are going to be better. You don't need more time to work necessarily because we've seen the statistics on the 40-hour work week. People realistically work 25 hours of those 40 hours.
Yeah.
And out of that 40 hours, they're spending 15 of it at the water cooler or just dicking around or scrolling through Facebook.
Right.
You take your time and be efficient with it and attack at your full capability throughout that time and then go home.
Well, and that's like, and I think
rest.
the thing that like dovetails with that is like get yourself in a place that forces you to grow and then like be disciplined with your time management is like, you have to know yourself enough to know even what that means. And
exactly.
Different people, it's different things. Some people operate really well under pressure. Like, well, if you have the right pressure points around you to keep you focused. Some people work better with no pressure at all. Okay, great. What do you do with that?
Right.
And it's not looking at Will like, oh, Will's plan's my plan. It's like, no, like look at the slack that you have in your day that's not serving you. Not even serving you for entertainment. Like entertainment that's unrefined, that just finds its way into your day
Instagram,
is toxic.
Facebook, yep.
Yeah, it's like, but
We're
it's not to
talking
be
about that
not
on the way here.
entertained. It's not to not be entertained. It's
Right.
like make choices about it.
Well, and there's a time for that too. You know, one of the things that I had to prioritize was quality time with my wife. And sometimes at the end of the day, when you are smoked from dealing with the day, you've finally gotten your kids to bed and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock, and you just need 20 or 30 minutes to unwind. You may not have a conversation. You may just be too burned out and there's just nothing left. But my wife loves The Office, and spending quality time with her, watching 30 minutes, watching one episode of The Office with her on the couch, cuddled up, That's intentional
good
time
partner
use.
communication too, and the fact that you're aligned on that. That conversation happened.
Yeah.
At some point that say, hey, what do you need at this point? So what do you need at that point? And at what intervals? Like a week interval, a month interval, a quarter interval. Do you need the bigger thing? Or you go on a vacation together, or you find some more time. So we got your two. I want to stay on this real quick.
Yeah.
We got the first. What would be your third?
Good question. I think being grateful for the challenges that are ahead of you. Like right now, I'm in a season where we've been in a survival mode, basically a year, maybe longer, and I'm worn out. And I've got 3 businesses I'm a part of and a podcast where now my producer is leaving, and so I've got to make some decisions with that, and I've got to. I got to shift some things around. Got to make some decisions of delegating and where am I gonna put my focuses going into the new year, right? And it's great timing because it's the new year. I get to refresh. I get to and being grateful for those challenges, and attaching it to something greater than yourself. I think that's even more what it is rather than being grateful, is attaching it to something bigger than yourself. I have a vision for what I want to create in my life and how I want to impact people through that. I feel like God has me here to do more than I'm doing, even now. So I need to figure out the best ways to do that. But doing that without dropping the ball in every other arena. And right now I feel like I have spread myself thin, and because I'm not as focused in certain ways, I'm dropping the ball in some areas. And that's, I've got to give myself some grace with that. But I also need to realize, okay, I'm dropping the ball. I don't want to be dropping the ball because I'm very hard on myself. So yeah, I would say attaching what you're doing to something bigger than yourself.
That's huge. And I think that how I frame that question is you have young people listening here, relatively speaking, in their first 4 or 5 years in any industry, wondering, is this industry for me? Do I even like this job? What is it like to be a grown-up? You know what I mean? Listening to this. And even some people trying to transition careers. Like you see people in selling roles where you and I both came up, where you see the kind of money and you see the kind of lifestyle and you're like, I want that.
But do you?
When you run, exactly. Do you? Where it's like, do you want what comes along with it? And the fact that some people, a broader cultural phenomena in America right now is we live in the veritable, almost endless Vegas Chinese buffet of whatever you want to do with your time, almost always. And if we were judged, like the Lord came down now and judged us on how we leveraged the freedom of choice, if we got anything more than an F+, I would be shocked on the whole. Like, it's not like we're a bastion of awesome decision-making and self-discipline.
No.
Look at America as a whole.
We're gluttonous as all get out.
So when you go in, it's like when you look at that from that level, when you look at sales, I find that especially field sales, consultative selling, the stuff that probably more Tom James-esque style of sell, there's a lot of time to think before you chop. There's a lot of time to think before, and if you're not aligning yourself around what you even just shared, places that you're forced to grow, how might I be better today? Which could be more efficient, which could be, hey, I want to make 10 extra, it could be an effort thing. It could be something, but finding out to push yourself beyond, to test yourself. Time management discipline, which is almost the number one once you have the knowledge. It's how do I deploy the knowledge? Could I burn myself out and make a ton of money short term? Yes, but that's all short term thinking.
Right.
Well, if I go long term, if you go too far on the bottom end, it's going to be too slow of a build and you're going to be in financial trouble. And the last thing you talked about is gratitude, which I think is just about gone collectively in American culture.
Yeah.
It's what I don't have. And it's the words I talk about a lot. One of the biggest stopper words I find in my coaching practice is when I hear there's other adjectives people can use, the word deserve. I didn't deserve what happened to me. I did deserve this that I didn't get.
Yeah.
And it's that resentment. That's
I have to say to deserve, the word deserve, you don't deserve shit.
Yeah, right.
If you're telling me you deserve something, you don't deserve
But I
shit.
think that's that mindset that you can come up with, where my wife and I were even talking about, we've had I just had a dear friend pass, unfortunately. And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. And it's still really fresh. And we were just when that stuff happens, your brain kind of just starts unloading stuff into you, and you're sad. And then the next moment you're reflective, and it's just man, why do who am I that I get to still be here?
Mm-hmm.
And this guy with a family and 7 kids is not here now. And it's like, I mean, it's like, how do you rationalize that? And then we're just talking about our life. It's like these moments where it's like, you're sad, you're grateful you're still around, you want to make good use of it. And I'm like, you know, what's funny, hun, is that like when we complain about this, if we just rewound like 300 years and all the gratitude we would have to be deployed to get to the thing we're even complaining about. It's like, yeah, you know, driving the kids around, it's been like drive.
Yeah.
What's that? Well, in a car, you know, the car, what's a car? And you keep going, well, yeah.
It would have taken us 2 days to get
the laundry's
to
piling
get here.
up and I can't get to the laundry machine. The what machine?
Yeah. We'd
spend all day doing that before we start dinner. It's like
your drive from Muncie to Indianapolis today would have been a 2-day journey.
Yeah. It's if we made it.
If,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, if you made it, exactly.
And I think that's where it's like when it comes to gratitude and like things greater than yourself, I think that we're in a time right now with the attention span and all the dopamine tools of like phones and everything else this will make us more productive. This will make us more efficient, but it can make us more efficient and productive with dumb things. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're putting out more of them. And then the other thing it does is it narrows your focus so much into the next thing that's an inch in front of your face. It's a recipe to train yourself to not have perspective,
right?
To not be grateful, to not
that
see.
Little machine can give you a dopamine release in the palm
every time. And we're a high like alpha drive venturing culture that has no patience,
right?
Which is how we got built. Like, hey, you're going to go over to America. What's America? You don't have any pictures. You don't know what's over there. You don't know if there's going to people that are going to kill you. There's free land. Let's go.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks on the ocean with my whole family and nothing. Cause let's give it we forget
dysentery, disease.
We forget
lack
how
of food.
Crazy.
Yeah.
We won't even go on vacation. Well, let's see what the Airbnb, let's see how many stars it got.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, like there is so much that happened before us and we're so narrow in how we look at those things, and bringing that back to career, bringing that back to sales, bringing that when you instill that and you foster that, it's like it can almost make you indestructible.
Yeah.
It can literally, because when you got to talk about deserve, when it's all your fault, there's a freedom in that when you embrace it. There's a real freedom versus
one of the best books I ever read was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And that book, it reframes your mindset on I don't blame people for anything anymore. There are times where, especially when you're in leadership, people do have to take responsibility for their actions. But like I had the first guy I brought into my insurance company as a sales guy underneath me. I wasn't ready yet to bring him in. He was not the right person for the job. And I had to let him go. Good kid, but I should have realized right off the bat, he wasn't the right person for the job. He didn't put the work in, and that's on him when it comes to how much money he wanted to make or how productive he wanted to be. I gave him most of the tools that he needed to do the job that he didn't take advantage of. However, was I present for him? No. Was I showing him the grind of the day-to-day? No. I was too busy doing my own thing. And so his failure was on me. His failure was on him too, but it was on me first because he was young. If I didn't have good leaders coming into sales or good mentorship coming into career, into adulthood, into fatherhood, I probably would have done the same shit. And therefore, I really let him down. He didn't let me down in any way. I let him down.
But in the moment, it probably sure felt like he was letting you down.
I knew that it was aggravating, but because it's like, dude, you got to want it. Right? You got to want it. But you're in a position of leadership. You have a job in leadership because everybody doesn't want it. Right? That's the only reason you have a job in leadership. So you have to learn how to get on those people's level. It's like when you're talking to your son, right? I stand over my son and pound my fist and yell and get loud. It makes him retreat into himself.
Right.
If I get down on his level and I talk to him and I ask him questions to help him understand, and I'm calm, stern, but calm, he thinks through it. He goes, should I have done this? No. Cool.
How old's your son?
He's 8.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this with him since he was 5 or 6. Don't get me wrong. There's still times where I lose my shit and I yell.
He's human.
I'm human. But that's what you have to do in a leadership position in business. Because as much as I hate to say it, most adults are overgrown children. They stop developing at a certain age. And I think that what causes that block in development at a certain point is, I think alcohol has a lot to do with that. It's not the sole thing, because there are many people who are smart as shit who drink alcohol every day, right? I think that does hinder a lot of people's growth mentally. I think drugs can hinder people's growth a lot mentally, but I think the number one thing that hinders people's growth is they stop picking up books. They stop learning, and they stop trying to grow. They get comfortable with the fact that, oh, you know what? I'm 30. Man, I was good back in high school. I had a 300-pound bench when I was 20. Whatever, their thing was. I was this good. And, what was Toby Keith's song? I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was, right? Like, they stop growing at a certain point because they stop trying to learn. They stop trying to push themselves to the next level. At 32 years old, I'm in the best shape of my life, and I plan to only get more fit. Now, it doesn't mean my strength is going to keep going up, because at a certain point, your numbers are going to cease unless you synthetically alter that. Yeah. But it doesn't mean I can't get leaner. Doesn't mean I can't get my cardiovascular up even more. It doesn't mean I can't focus on longevity and health and nutrition more. I can keep getting better, and I plan to be better at 60 than I am now. I'm going to keep doing those muscle ups, and I'm going to keep doing those gymnastics. And one day, maybe that's all I focus on.
Right. Well, and I think you made a good crossover point from like where we've been traveling in the conversation to the importance of fitness and rigor. That comfort zone does it. Our bodies matter. Yeah. How we present ourselves. As a man who fitted people with suits and what have you, and like different body types. Like I got a 17-inch neck, and I got like a 33-inch waist. It's like there's not like off the rack. Now there's a little bit more options. It's different, but I think with the knowledge and visibility of what it takes to be successful, I think getting around and whoever's listening to this, if you're currently not fit and you're not training, what I'm about to talk about is doing fit behavior that leads only one direction, which is fit. Yeah, like that is fit. The outcome at some stage, depending upon where you're coming from.
It doesn't mean you need to be doing the ring muscle ups or the 200-pound snatch, by the way.
No, but it means that at some point you're going to start being measured on how you show up. Right. And if it's not physically and how you look, it's going to be on how much energy you can bring to the table, the quality of your thought when you talk about the brain and what you're putting into it, and all the science coming out right now and peer-reviewed studies on what exercise does for your brain. What the most successful people in the world, if you had to take away everything from them, what they wouldn't give up, it would be exercise. Cold exposure, heat exposure. What is that? Discomfort. It's like the whole gamut. It seems like, and by the way, this is an incredibly biased audience. Gym owner, right? CrossFitter, where it's like that's the world that we live in, and we get along well because we both live those languages.
And to say something to that, I've done it all: bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, played different sports, all that. CrossFit is the number one piece to staying fit, healthy, and increasing your longevity. I don't mean that in the sense of training like an athlete. CrossFit for athletes or competitive CrossFit athletes is different than CrossFit for the everyday
It could not
person.
be called longevity training.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that is something that, that's me selling CrossFit right now, which is funny because I'm not even a CrossFit affiliate, but that's essentially what we do.
Yeah. Well, but in your story, fitness is a key component. Yeah. In my story, fitness is a key component. It still keeps coming up in my coaching calls and everything when it comes to where people are getting to their wits end, even in early stage career, late stage career. It's like, what do you not want to lose? Yeah. The ability to contribute. You need energy. You need these things. You talked about sleep
and the
before.
Ability to be dangerous, right? Like, what's the quote? It's better to be a
warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think that there's still a dying mindset of the in early out late office culture. Of success is this thing.
I still struggle with that.
I'm grinding where it's like there's a perception, and it's a lot of it's placed in people's own minds. They place it on themselves. Like I need to because grandpa did and my dad did and all.
Where it got ingrained from when we started, and this could go down a whole other rabbit hole, so we'll try not to do that today. But this all started when we brought industrialized schooling into our society. I think I may be wrong about this. This is what I have heard, and I have not done my own research to clarify this. But from what I understand, Henry Ford is one of the big contributors to bringing the school system we know today.
Yeah, because he needed people to operate that way to build the cars.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes
you
perfect sense.
Factory workers, which turned into the white collar factory work of the 9-to-5 job, right?
Now it's not 1984. It's Aldous Huxley's book where what's the alternative future where it's all pleasure and comfort.
Oh gosh, that's where we're headed for sure.
The name escapes me, but A Brave New World is the name of the book, where it's like you're entertaining yourself to death.
That sounds scary.
In there,
there was a show called Altered Carbon on Netflix. I would encourage everybody to watch it. Do not watch it with children because it is raunchy at times, but it is that. And you have the rich that are living literally in the clouds that have backup upon backup upon backup, and because they have all the money, they can keep recreating their body. And they can pull their backup out of their brain as long as that disc doesn't get crushed. They can keep going so you have these wealthy who just continue getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier because they never die. Never die. But then you have the pawns of the world, right, that aren't getting any better, and they do die.
Yeah, and just the distance keeps increasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like where I was going with the track is, I think that in the new generation, in these new generation, it doesn't mean, I don't want to even talk about age. It could be anybody that wants to opt in for this.
Yeah.
And all of this development, and we talked about sales because that's kind of our MO, and like gym and everything else. It's going to be through experience, through movement, through rigor, physical, mental, spiritual.
Yeah. That
learning and development and all of these things are going to be taking place, because who wants to sit and stare at a PowerPoint for 8 hours in a room?
Right.
And like, okay, you learned today. I'm like, did I?
I didn't learn that.
Did I? And it's like versus.
I failed at school.
Yeah. And many successful people did, and I think that the people think about even the people that we train with, like, and who you're training with and the conversation. I'm like, what company do you run? What do you own? Like, there's a different mindset that exists there. And it's so interesting. And this is CrossFit, but if you do something else and you're listening to this, I mean, that's fine too. It's just
everybody has
where I'm at.
You can run. Be moving.
But you get this, that there is a sense of gratitude. I mean, even people that I know that do jujitsu, after they're done with jiu-jitsu, like there's a sense of gratitude, calm, peace, and things. Our bodies
brings humility.
Our bodies are made for we need discomfort to grow. We need discomfort to grow. That's why I always like it's encouraged, like executives, like when they build training programs, like, what's your training program?
Right.
But what are you going to do? Well, this is for them.
Starts at the top.
You need to lead. Like, they're watching you. You are already a mentor of the behavior you want to see from people. And we talked earlier. I said,
and that's something Tom James does really well. Like the CEO now is Todd Brown. And the CEO before that was Spencer Hayes. And Todd, cool thing, is from Bloomington, Indiana, and is still in Indianapolis today, which is really cool.
All right.
So I got to spend a lot of time with him, which was a part of my development. And they led from the top. They showed people, and that is true leadership. Don't tell me what to do. Show me what to do.
Right.
Now maybe that's just because I learn hands-on and I need to be shown, but it works.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, if I ask somebody if they want to go to like a Taylor Swift concert or a great comedian, or you're going to go to a sales training or an emotional intelligence workshop, it's no contest what everyone's going to pick.
Right.
And I don't say like turn training or turn development or turn all these things or turn even management into a show, but we want to have an embodied experience.
Yeah.
And sitting in chairs all day long, staring at glowing screens, I think we're getting to the point right now where we've squeezed that sponge about as far as we can squeeze it. So a lot of like online training and online this and online that
still need that in person.
Has to be supplemental to something else when we move, because as a business owner, we even talked about talent a little bit going through here. Like, the game right now is retention. You find those talented people, you want to keep them engaged.
Well,
not just knowing and producing for you,
right.
but like, I want to be a part of what you're building.
One of the only reasons I think that as CrossFit gym owners, we still have businesses is because with people working as remotely as they are and having the ability to work from home, whatever, even if you're going into an office, you're locked away in your office working, right? We have businesses still because people need interpersonal connection, and they need that fist bump. They need that smell. They need the blood, sweat, and tears that comes with it. You can't build bonds without that. Genuine bonds, right? The other aspect to that is in business, and I'm just kind of going back here to when you're talking about going into business and coaching people and physicality being a part of it and rigor being a part of it. One, we are physical, mental, and spiritual beings. If those three things are not met, you can have one, mental, scrolling through your phone, porn, right? All those things that can stimulate that dopamine. You can have that. But if you're not outside breathing fresh air, getting sun on your skin, which by the way creates vitamin D3 in your body, which then helps with depression, anxiety, all that.
Right.
You're not sweating every day. You're not getting out there moving around. If you don't have that, you're depressed, you're anxious. Carmel, Indiana has one of the highest rates of antidepressant prescriptions.
Wow.
Carmel, Indiana. People are rich. People got money. It's an optimistic place to be. People are growing businesses left and right. Corporations are coming in. They're bringing people in. Why do you think that is? So there's that aspect of fitness within the realm of career, using it as a tool. You don't have to be an athlete to still be in really good shape. But the other aspect to that is, what is the first thing you look at when you shake somebody's hand for the first time?
Their eyes?
Well, appearance, right? You are looking at their haircut. You are looking at, do they've got all the neck hair or, whatever. Are they well groomed, right? We are at an initial glance, we are physical beings. We and especially men are very visual creatures. I'm going to evaluate, are you a threat? Are you somebody I want to be in business with? Are you somebody that I can trust? Are you somebody that I need to be on guard, looking out for? Are you somebody that is going to grind with me? Are you going to be able to keep up with me? If I look at you and you're fat and out of shape and not well groomed and all that, I'm like, I don't want to do business with this guy.
Yeah, or
this
isn't carry my business card to hand to somebody else and represent me.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, I don't want you representing me. I don't want to be representing you. Right? Doesn't mean those people aren't good people. But initially, we are visual creatures, and we're going to look at somebody's appearance. And if they're fat, out of shape, you can tell they don't take care of themselves. Because I'll tell you what, if you're fat, you're probably not well groomed. If you're not well groomed, you're probably overweight. It all just lays itself hand in hand right there.
Well, and the key is it goes back to honestly where we even started with putting yourself around people that challenge you.
Yeah.
And to grow to everything else. And it's the same mode here. And what's beautiful about what I found in CrossFit, being I was a Division I track coach. I ran track. I played a little rugby. We've talked about it a little. I've done a bunch of things to stay in shape. And it's get on a team, get in an environment where you have elevating characters around you, and you will just go be human there. You have no choice. As long as you keep showing up, ego be damned.
Yep.
There's only one direction that goes. There's only one way to go, is up to them, versus even on the small victors, which they have huge egos in these little worlds. They're like the king of the anthill. Where I'm your growth has ended there. You have your little worshiper group, you have your friends that you're better than them. Congratulations. If that's your metric, looking down instead of looking up, what would the next thing be? How can I gain more?
And I think that's one of the few benefits to social media, is the fact that it has opened the world up to be able to get around more like-minded people, even if you don't live near them.
Right.
Because for my entire life, I never felt like I fit in where I have lived. Right. I didn't have access to people that had, and what's funny about all that is I was the troublemaker. I was the ADD kid. I was the kid who didn't do well in school. I was the tattooed guy in high school that nobody's parents wanted them hanging out with. I just had a ton of energy. I was ready to go all the time. I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to explore. I wanted to do adventure. Unfortunately, I didn't grow up with a father, so I didn't have that male influence to take me to do that stuff. And now that I'm older, I'm doing it, and I'm taking my boy along with me to show him that. Again, we could go down a rabbit hole with that whole thing, but I got off track here. But yeah, I mean,
well, you got off track right when the moment you said ADHD, which is a perfect intro.
There you go. There it is, right there.
Well, but I think this has been great, first of all, and I love our conversations to keep talking. I know that you challenge me with your ideas, and we're sharing ideas about how it works, and it's a joy to know you. How can people listening, if they're seeing and meeting Will for the first time, find you?
So I've got a podcast, Legacy Minds podcast. We're on Instagram. If you want to follow us there, I'm Power of Will. See what I did there?
Nice.
On Instagram as well, but with a 0 instead of an O. The other one was taken. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, just Will Ramey. And then, our website for our company is legacyinsuranceent.com, and then legacyathletics.co.
All right, beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes and links all on social media when people could find it. And awesome talking with you, man.
Likewise, brother.